Hi, folks. I'm Todd Woodruff, and we're here at the Farm Science Review, and I'm with Mr. Captain David Torcell and Mr. Andy Bauer, and they are putting on a rescue demonstration that they've done in the past. It's a training. It's a training session, really, and we're just here to talk to them about the statistics and whatnot. Now, Dave, I'll ask you, as a rule of thumb, how many folks have been trapped in a grain bin?
It's funny you ask that because the types of incidents that occur, they're not really high profile, and there's a lot that go unreported. I believe it was back in 2008, there were 34 nationwide. 98, I believe, was the banner year, so if you want to call it that, with about 47. In the last 12 years, we've had in a 5-county area.
Yeah, in a 5-county area around Champaign County, we've had 6 deaths. 5 of them in a grain bin, 1 of them in a truck delivering grain to a bin. And so it started out from that we wanted to be able to do something with our own employees as Heritage Cooperative, so that if we have a problem, that we know how to handle and what to do with it. We worked with Urbana Fire, and we've been working together for about 3.5, 4 years now.
Absolutely.
Doing joint training and trying to then expand that into other fire departments, into also our own employees, and trying to develop that relationship with them, but now also trying to get the word out to the farmers that it is a very definite problem and it's something that can be prevented if they use some common sense.
Now, I tell you one thing that I was surprised. You would assume that almost every fire department across the country would go through training for rescue. Now, it's my understanding here today that that is not the case. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct, Todd. Fortunately, I started many years ago out of my own concern and was able to get with Andy. But historically, firefighters are not trained in anything agricultural, and due to a family member being lost on a farm or died on a farm, I thought to myself, this is the #1 industry in Ohio, and I have no training in it. What do I do? And I just started asking questions, got with good people like Heritage, and it snowballed from there.
Now I'll tell you what. The one thing, I noticed the equipment that you have. It looks like to me, okay, somebody's trapped. We get 2-3 guys around him. We yank him up out of there. That's not the case, is it?
No, it's not. If the person is trapped, even if you have we use a safety harness and a safety line on them when we're doing the demonstrations and doing the training. But even if they do have that on, if you tried to pull them out just by the harness, depending on how far into the grain they were, you would actually pull the body apart, because there is that much vacuum created by that grain that you cannot move, you cannot just pull out.
Now, Dave, have you ever lost firemen or folks just trying to rescue somebody?
The unfortunate thing about all of this is, Todd, that many of the would-be rescuers become victims themselves for exactly the reason that we talked about earlier. They lack training. Many firefighters who have no idea. We're used to coming to the scene of a fire that we know a lot about, rush inside, take care of the problem. And people now have to stand back and look at the situation and say, this is something I don't know how to handle and I need help, or I need more training. The other side of the coin is that normally we're asking people in the crowd to stay back so they don't get hurt. Now we have to involve the farmers and their neighbors, because they're the ones knowledgeable in the equipment, the processes, and we need their knowledge to help us get it done. And that's another reason why we work so closely, again, with Heritage, because we have people in the agricultural industry and the fire industry that are now doing the same thing with the same end in sight. And by working together, it's made a remarkable difference in what we can do.
Well, and I tell you, now let's take a step back. It's one thing after the fire department gets there, but now step one, I've realized I've got somebody in a grain bin. What's the first thing I need to do to even have hope here?
Well, if you're out on the farm or if it's in the industry, basically stopping the flow of grain. And that's where we go back and say somebody has to be on the outside of that bin when an employee or farmer or whatever is on the inside. And that person on the outside has to have the knowledge of how to stop the equipment, how to shut it off. And that's the first thing that needs to be done. The next inclination of that person is that I'm going to go in there and help get Dad out or whoever it is, and that's the wrong thing to do. It's what you want to do, but what you need to do is call and get help.
Well, and I know Dale, as we saw in the demonstration, he was waist high, and frankly couldn't move.
And he's a pretty tough guy. I mean, he's no little guy, and he couldn't pull himself out.
Right. Now, the one thing, Andy, we got to keep in mind: the flow of grain was stopped.
Right. The flow of grain is stopped, and as you referred to, hey, I've got the grain stopped. Why can't I go in and help Dad? And as Dave talked about, the flow of grain coming around that person as you're trying to walk in. Maybe the bin had a crust over it to begin with, and so you don't know how stable the rest of that grain is. And that's why we try and say, no, as bad as you want to, don't go in and help out. Wait until you've got more help there. Try and get a rope down to that person so that they can at least have something to tie themselves off so that they don't go down any further.
That should probably be one of the first things. If you have to go in that bin, should you or should you not tie off with a rope?
You should tie off with a rope, but you should also have a harness, because if you're just tying off with a rope, you're holding on to it with your hand. We actually had a victim that had it tied off to his belt. It just doesn't work. They need just a good, and not a real expensive harness, but something that's actually made to keep them in place. If you can keep them from going down, that's the big thing. Half the battle's won.
You can get a good harness for probably $70. And that's a pretty cheap investment when, as Dave referred to it before, it's a heck of a lot cheaper than a funeral.
Thank you, Andy. And now we're going to check in with Dale Minyo. Hi, folks. I'm Todd Woodruff, and we're here at the Farm Science Review. And as you can see, we've got the voice you know and the news you trust, Mr. Dale Minyo, in quite a bit of a problem here. Dale, tell us where you are absolutely stuck.
I'm absolutely stuck. The strange part is I volunteered for this, so I figure if you're going to help people explain it and understand it, you better try it. It's a whole lot easier. I heard what we're going to do, but it feels a lot different than what we had to do, so now I'm trying to dig enough of me out to at least start to pull my legs out, but I was only waist deep to start with, so this is a lot of work.
Now, I'll tell you what, he went down better than waist deep in less than a second and a half, and less than 3 bushels of corn. Now, you got to keep in mind, it was a very slow process in comparison to what it would be if you were over a grain dump in a gravity wagon or a semi-trailer. And, Dale, there's no way you can get out of there on your own, even waist high, right?
I guess I've read enough to not even try it, but no, you couldn't. There's no way you'd pull yourself out at this point, and I'm under my thighs at this point.
Maybe you need to work out a little bit more. Would that help you?
I don't know if I can work out that long.
I understand. But, folks, the point we're trying to make is that the kids playing in the grain wagons and the semis, it takes you under way too fast. And as you can see, this is the process that it takes to actually get somebody out. And most of the time, it's not a very successful rescue. So, once again, we're with Dale Minyo, and I think he would rather end this interview and try to get out of there. Right, Dale?
I'm working along, but it's going to be a little bit yet.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm kind of having fun watching you work, because all I ever thought you ever did was sit on the radio and ratchet jaw.
Sit and talk, that's it.
You know, I think the one thing that we all have to keep in mind is use common sense. Don't ever take the attitude that it's not going to happen to me. I've done it before. And if you have any questions at any time, or it might be worth checking with your local fire department and see if they have the tools and the training to rescue somebody in your area if need be. And I'm kind of going to step out on a limb, Captain. If somebody has questions, are they free to give you a call?
They can call me at the Urbana Fire Department. They can get a hold of Andy. He knows how to get a hold of me. The big thing that I'd like to, and you brought it up, I am so glad that you did. Your fire department, some of your firefighters won't take the first step. The farmer needs to. Approach your fire department and say, hey, I've got this out here. Why don't you come out here and we'll talk about it and train.
So, folks, feel free to give them a call and just ask the question. It's a simple question, and we're trying to help you out. Captain Dave, Andy, thank you very much for your time.
Down the Road is brought to you in part by Prince Agra, makers of Omnigen AF, advancing animal nutrition for healthy animals, and Woodruff Enterprise of Springfield,